Tremendous here, and I got another book review here for you. This one is, all right, so the book was sent to me, and it's a collection of short stories. It's like 16 short stories in this one book called the Persolus Race. I think that's how you say it. If I'm screwing it up, I apologize. Volume 1. So this is an ongoing thing. In the book, it describes how basically this individual, Alex O'Neill, with a handful of others, I believe Rachel Shipp, I believe M.M. Dixon, and I believe there's another O'Neill, that all contributed to a bunch of these stories. They're all written by different people, but they all basically follow the same path. What if humanity explored the universe and discovered that they were the only intelligent life in it? And these stories are all loosely related to that. I'm going through and I'm going to do a review of each of the short stories because they were written by different people. And honestly, it's almost 500 pages, this book. So if I tried to read 500 pages and 16 different stories and then do a review, we'd be here for 10 hours and I would get a lot of the details mixed up. So I'm going to do each individual one of these short stories. This is one of 16, The Man in the Mountain, written by Alex O'Neill. It is all science fiction. And the Persolus Race was published back in August 26 of 2021, and this particular short story is about 25 pages long. So let's get into it. We're going to go ahead and start with the spoiler-free review. So the overview on this one is the main character, Adam Rahange. I think I'm saying that right, and if not, well, Adam doesn't really exist, so he can't take offense. But the point is, he's an undergrad that was like working on his PhD at this university. He's working, and he gets a job as a researcher on a time machine project with this Dr. Connors, who's like a living legend. She's written a couple of books about these things called Edens or whatever. Basically, they're terraforming machines. The year is 2450, and humanity is exploring the Milky Way and stuff like that. And we're terraforming planets for our colonization, stuff like that. And these individuals have gotten together. It's the main character, Adam Rahange. The secondary character, supporting character, is Maria, a chubby researching semi-love interest. We'll get into that a little bit later. And the person in charge, Dr. Connors, who's kind of a living legend, definitely one of Adam's heroes, which we'll get into that because it's a little odd. And it's a real quick story about how they're trying to develop this time machine. The cover is actually pretty good. It's a little, I would say, like EVE Online, which is good. That's not a bad thing. It kind of looks a little computer graphic-y, something that I would expect to see on an older video game or something like that, like the old, like an old MMO or something. But it definitely would catch my attention. It's interesting. There is a little bit of room for improvement, I think, but honestly, this cover works. The colors are interesting. It definitely is it catches your eye. The machines and the little person right there, or robot, not really sure. But it's definitely sci-fi. It definitely fits. I got no issue with this cover. I don't like the font that they used, but that's me just being nitpicky. There's really nothing wrong with it. The editing of this particular story was not terrible, but not great. It looks like maybe as a collective, these individuals edited their own stories or edited them between each other. I don't know. I don't know that for sure. It says edited by Alex O'Neill, but he was also the author of this particular story. I really think that this book could go with a professional editor because there are not a ton of mistakes, but there's some considerable mistakes, some grammar issues, some dialect issues, some vernacular choices that are just really bad that an editor would have caught and either corrected or pointed out for the author to correct. So editing needs some work on this. The story flow, I mean, it's a short story, so it's definitely fast paced. It's definitely something that you can get through, you chew through real quick. The continuity is there. The flow is there. There's no issue reading the book. It's just some of it doesn't make any sense. A lot of things aren't explained. And I'm not looking for a short story. Obviously, I'm not looking for anything that's going to be real in depth. We're not talking like Tolkien level of friggin' explanation or anything like that. But things still need to make sense. The reader shouldn't feel jarred. The reader shouldn't be reading through even a short story without having some understanding, which the author has to create, on why things are the way they are. One of those examples is they're working on a time machine for this at this university, right? And they're keeping it a secret from the university. They're telling them that they're working on different power sources for the terraforming machines, the Edens or whatever, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, I get that there could be a reason why they're keeping it a secret, but why? Why would they keep it a secret? That real quick, like 1 line, 2 line reason of why they're keeping it a secret from the university would go a long way to helping you understand why that has to occur. And it's just not there. And that's one of the things. There's a lot of things that just aren't explained well, don't make any sense. It just seems to be thrown in there because it's the spaghetti theory. They threw a plate of spaghetti at the wall and they just wrote whatever stuck. I didn't like that. And the feel, I got to be honest, the feel of the story, while it's just not there. The story is supposed to be set. It is set in the year 2450, yet it feels like you're in the year 2010. And I'll get into that more in the spoilers, but we'll definitely get more detail on that in just a second. So the pros to this book, and there are some. It's a very interesting concept. Time travel, I hate time travel. I really do. In any story, I hate time travel. However, it's an interesting concept because it's the way the problems that they're having with time travel doesn't really have anything to do with time travel itself. It's something else, and it's a cool concept. Like, this is not something I've ever really seen before. Sure, I'm sure somebody has already come up with a version of their concept. I have no doubt, but this is the first time I've seen it, and I like it. I thought it was really clever and interesting. The ending to this short story it makes sense. Like, it's real, and I like that. I respect that. A lot of authors wouldn't do that because, again, I don't want to give any spoilers, but a lot of people would skip that particular type of ending because it closes doors. The prologue to this book is outstanding. It goes through and paints the picture of the world pretty well, but it's a very broad stroke. It doesn't really get into any minutia, but it's still cool. It sets the tone. It sets the feel. Just unfortunately, this short story didn't, in my opinion, it did not live up to what the prologue set up, if that makes sense. And like I said, the variable that they're having an issue with when it comes to time travel is very cool, very clever. I actually like that concept a lot. The cons, it needs better editing. I was stumbling over a lot of the dialect and stuff. It's a difficult read because the editing is off. A lot of reuse of like different like words and like stuff that like I would like not want to see like 50 like times on the like sentence. And yes, that was an example. Just I exaggerate to clarify, it wasn't that bad, but there was a lot of reuse of words in the same paragraph. Just a lot of things that an editor would have caught, a professional editor, or at least one that does it for a living. So I really think that this particular story would benefit from a real editor. Every character's dialogue is stilted and reads. Nobody talks like that. It's all their personalities are the same personality. They don't really change it up at all. It could all be the same person's dialogue. If you took their names out of there and just read what was on there, you wouldn't know whose personality it was or anything. It's frustrating because it just feels like a two-dimensional individual. It's up to the author to create characters that are three-dimensional, that you can care about. And when it comes to a short story, that's even more important because it's a short story. You don't have that build-up time. And every character in your book, especially if they're a supporting character or one with dialogue or one that's going to be a focus on the story, especially in a short story, has to feel real, has to feel flesh and blood. Otherwise, you just don't care. They're words on a page and it doesn't reach the reader, and none of these characters reached me. Well, that's not fair. The main character reached me, I'll give him that, but not in a positive way. The second character, the Maria, she was just filler, and the doctor character, one of the most incompetent characters at the position they supposedly held I've ever seen in well, not in any story, but in most stories that I've run into, movie and book alike. Another issue is the character traits don't line up. So the main character is described as a scrawny, stereotypical academic. Okay, white dude, blonde hair, scrawny dude, right? Little dude. Uh, Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But later on in the story, you find out that he was a professional athlete before coming to academia, and he was like captain of the rugby team and a runner and stuff. But the two traits don't line up, and these are within a dozen pages of each other, so 20 at the most. So it's those kind of continuity errors that, number one, an editor would have caught, and number two, the author should have caught. Who that character is supposed to be should be fleshed out before putting first words on page one. I'm sorry, that is unforgivable. Anytime your character traits contradict each other like that without any reasoning or understanding is unacceptable, especially in a short story. I mean, proofread it, right? There's an odd motivation for the main character. Again, I don't want to spoil it. As upset as I am, as long as my con list is, I of course always want people to go out, read the book, and find out for themselves. Come back into the comment section, let me know what you think. Love to have a conversation about any book that I review. But the motivation of the main character doesn't make any sense. The motivation of all the characters, it's not there. I mean, yeah, sure, time travel. We're trying to build time travel. That I get that, but why? What is the overarching need to go back in time and fix stuff? Because the prologue and the story show that the world is actually a really good place. We got climate change under control. We're exploring the universe. We're exploring, the Milky Way. All this stuff for thousand, like I think it's like 3900 or something, like the year 3900 in the prologue is touched on. So things are going great. There's no reason, no motivation given for why they're trying so hard to make this time machine thing work. And again, that's one or two lines of dialogue or descriptive narrative in there that would have given a motivation to all these characters, and there's just not one. It doesn't, nothing really makes sense. The whole time you're reading the story, it's like, why am I reading this? And like, what's the purpose? What's the point? And again, I know it's a short story, but in a short story, it's even more important to get your point across right away because you have less time to do it. The main character, one of my biggest problems with him is that he's a complete jerk for no reason. He literally tells the secondary character who's just offering, it's like she throws herself at him constantly in this story. Oh, let me come over to your house. Let me make you some food. Let me take you out on a date. And he literally tells her to F off. Like, it's borderline verbal abuse. And I'm not really on that whole emotional roller coaster, but there's no reason for it. Like, she's not rude to him. She's not mean to him. She's not cruel. In fact, I think he considers her a friend, and yet when she's nice to him or offers, hey, let's go out, let's do this, let's be more than work buddies, he literally tells her to F off. Again, it's so wonky, it's so unearned that it's jarring. It takes you out of the story. It's like, what's going on with this character? He's all over the place. It's frustrating. I don't like the main character. And honestly, the weird pseudo shoehorned romance that was thrown into this was not needed for the story. Again, it's a short story. You have to be hyper focused on any character that's in there, any relationship. It all has to make sense. It all has to be linked up in order for it to work out. And there was a lot of stuff that could have been cut in order to just make the story better, more robust, make it make sense, and it's just not there. It's almost like the author got diverted away from the main plot a few times and nobody was around to correct it. It's really too bad. An editor would have caught that. So now we're going to get to the rating side of all this, and I struggled with this one. It really came down to like about a half a star, to be perfectly honest with you. But in the end, I ended up giving it 2 stars out of 5. And the reason because is I just didn't like the story. The characters were difficult to get behind. The storyline didn't line up. The editing is bad, to be perfectly honest. And It wasn't a 1 star though. I didn't hate it because there were concepts of the book that really caught my attention that I really liked. The problem they were having with the time machine, very clever. And I Googled it because, I'm not a PhD or a mathematician or anything crazy like that. And the math checks out according to Google, which is good enough for me when it comes to a short story. Got a kick out of that. So, and the ending too, the way it ends, I thought was good. I thought that was realistic, and I did enjoy the ending, but I didn't enjoy the book. I didn't think it was average. It has a lot of issues, editing, plot points, character development, dialogue, a lot of issues that really made it difficult to kind of cut through this, even though it's a short story. And like I said, I was glad it was over when I got to the end of it. That's it for the spoiler-free review. I'm going to get into more detail. If you don't want any spoilers, you don't want to, ruin it, you want to go and experience the book yourself, please, please, please do. I encourage that. Link to the book is in the description. It's on Amazon. You can pick it up no problem. Please feel free to not take my word for it. Go check it out. Come back and have a conversation in the comment section. I'd love nothing more than that. But yeah, we're going to take a quick break and go over to the spoiler-rich review and get into the meat of this. So here's the spoiler-filled section of the review. If you don't like spoilers, please stop the video now, go buy the book, read it yourself, come back in the comment section, we'll have a whole conversation about it. Then you can watch the rest of the video and see if our opinions, coalesce or if they're complete opposites. And we can have a conversation about it, all for it. But yeah, so Adam was chosen to be a researcher at his university while he was a student for Dr. Connors, who's running this project at the university. It alludes to the reason she chose him is because he's easily manipulated and controlled, and he's meek and yada yada yada. But honestly, whatever. The reason that he was chosen is kind of irrelevant. The year is set at 2450. But honestly, everything feels more like 2010. For example, in order to monitor the time travel experiments that they do, they have 5 cameras that they have to manually set up at different angles. And then when the experiment's over, they take the cameras down, connect them to a computer to watch video. I mean, there's a huge light, there's this really bright light that happens when the time travel thing happens, which they don't know why, but they have no machines capable of analyzing any of this. It is 430 years in the future, and they have 0 analytic equipment available. We are traveling the Milky Way, exploring new planets and solar systems, terraforming planets. But the best thing this university has in order to monitor and analyze time travel experiments is 5 cameras that record nothing but visual data that they have to set up manually, take down, and hook up to their, I don't know, Alienware computer in order to figure this stuff out. No. I'm sorry, no. Not a chance. No way that's right. We have more than that today, let alone 430 years from now. Another thing is, one of the first things that happens, the interaction between Adam and the supporting character Maria, who's a fellow researcher, is she throws either a DVD at him or a VHS tape of The Prestige. Yes, the movie about the magicians and the weird competition there. 400-plus-year-old movie she tosses him. No other entertainment that comes close to The Prestige is going to be created in 400-plus years. And the fact that she still has this DVD or VHS thing, I mean, 400-year-old entertainment medium, how it would even be used is beyond me. The fact that that movie even exists in that time frame surprises me. And the fact that there has to be some sort of hardware when everything now is streamed blows my mind. Like, why? There's no future tech in this story at all, other than the fact that they're working on a time machine. And that's it. There's no other future tech, which feels, I know it's a short story, I'm not expecting Star Trek levels of stuff, but this literally felt like I was walking around in a university in the year 2010. That was the level of technology I saw. For crying out loud, he goes up to the cafeteria and he's still having chili mac or whatever it was, chili con carne. It doesn't make sense at all. The woman that's with him is Maria. She's the other researcher on the team, and she throws herself at him, literally throws herself at him constantly. And although he sees her as a friend, he's not annoyed by her. It never says that he dislikes her, or they are their enemies or anything like that. He's awful to her. She literally offers, like, he's like, well, I'm going to bed for the night. Oh, maybe I should come with you. You wish. No reason for that at all. Like, wow. Adam's a jagoff. There's no two ways about it. At one point, she's like, are you hungry? I could make you some food. Maybe I'd come over, cook you dinner, something like that. Maybe we go out for a bite to eat. Literally tells her F off. It's like, what? And then in the same vein as he's leaving, they hug. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's her kink. I mean, no shame, but it does not connect at all. Plus, his character is supposed to be an intellectual, an academia type of person. Granted, 430 years from now, that could mean a lot different things, but there's no motivation, there's no explanation of that. There's no description that says things have changed in 430 years. No, literally this timeline, this storyline belongs in 2010. No, it doesn't make any sense. He works with this semi-famous doctor, Dr. Connors, and honestly, she's kind of an idiot. It's really difficult to like have any kind of respect for this she's supposed to be a semi-famous, world-renowned doctor of something. She wrote a couple of books about building Eden in your garden and like, I don't know, thoughts and prayers for the universe. It was very weird. Like, you don't understand why she's famous other than she's written a couple of books. You don't really know what she's done. But somehow she's built a time machine. She's not an engineer. She's not a developer. She's a research doctor on this stuff. She's like a theoretical physicist. So yeah, maybe she's got some engineering skills, maybe she's got some programming skills, but there's no developers, no programmers, no engineers. It's just two researchers and this doctor, university money. I don't get it. What? You're developing a time machine. Maybe that explains the lack of tech. Maybe that explains why there's literally a copy of the Prestige running around, because these three are in so over their head that the only reason this thing works is because plot. I don't know. They're keeping detailed notes. Like the guy Adam, so they're working on this time machine thing, right? And they get this rat named Michael, and they teleport, or I'm sorry, they try to time machine him 1/100th of a second into the past, right? Which is stupid because there's zero equipment they have to monitor that. I will give the author that. The characters even say that. Shouldn't we do something other than 1/100th of a second? Because there's no way for us to monitor that. We have no idea how we'll be able to tell if it was successful or not. And this doctor, this world-renowned doctor, is like, no, I want to keep it small. We got to learn how to crawl before we can walk. But how do you know if it was successful or not? So they end up taking this time machine. They put this rat in there, and they try to transport him 1/100th of a second back in time. And they hit the button, there's a big flash of light, the cameras of course miss everything, and when the light's gone, the rat is no longer in the containment box. It's about 3 meters to the left. Okay, it's still in the room, but it's scared and it's just sitting there in the corner. Of course, it doesn't try to run away or anything like that. They're able to recover it. Very friendly rat. 400 years from now, rats are totally domesticated. Anyway, they can't figure that out, and they're like, did we just develop teleportation instead of time travel? Which apparently is not something they already have, and that would be super useful. That would be a huge boon to society if they could do that. But the doctor gets furious. No, it's not teleportation. It's time travel that we're working on. I don't have time for this. Which, what an idiot. I mean, what an incredibly stupid person. If you stumble upon teleportation when you're trying to do time travel, you know what? Go ahead and take that win. Just future advice for all of you doctors out there. Take that W, because she just dismisses it for no reason. It's not teleportation. It's not what we've done. But it never explains why she thinks that. 2 sentences of dialogue. It's not teleportation because none of that is in this system. This machine could not do that. It must be something else. Okay, great, short story. I can make that leap, but this doesn't do that. She just dismisses it outright, and her 2 research assistants just go, okay, I guess we're not going to believe our eyes or anything else, because, yeah, analytic equipment just doesn't exist in this story. Except for 5 cameras that he has to filter the light in because of the big flash of light in order to see it. And what they see on the cameras is 1 frame, the rat is there, the next frame, the rat is gone, and then the frame after that, in the corner of the room, at the very edge of the video, although in the book, because the editing is bad, they call it the edge of the camera, which, again, an editor would have caught that. They see this rat cowering in the corner of the room. It's just, okay, that caught my attention, I won't lie, and it is actually a pretty neat little variable that they throw in there. I did like that part. So then the doctor storms out in a huff. Dr. Connor storms off in a huff and tells Adam to make sure that he writes up sheets and sheets of reports on this in the computer. So I don't understand what notes he's taking. We hit on, the rat teleported to the left 3 meters. We turned it off and have 0 other analytics on this. But it takes him hours to write this report up, but I don't understand why he's writing a report, because they're keeping this all as a secret from the university. So who's this report going to? The doctor? Why does she need hours of reports? None of this is explained. It's just, it's plot device so that the author can push the story forward for whatever reason. I don't understand that at all. It makes no sense. The reports serve no function. And again, it's a short story. A short story has to be clear, concise, and state at a friggin' point, because it's a short story. You don't have the luxury of time to pad out and make an explanation to your reader. It has to be very clear, very concise, and this story is anything but that. So bottom line is they try to think again, and they encourage the doctor, because she just wanted to try to redo this the whole experiment again to see what happens, and it's so stupid. So they eventually encourage her to up it to a full second of time travel. Again, no possible way for them to determine whether or not the experiment was successful, but you know, details. Who needs a successful test when you could just flip buttons? So they flip the button again, the light goes on, and the rat disappears. They think, for no reason whatsoever, they just think that the rat was vaporized. They have no idea why that could have happened or why the rat was vaporized. They don't even consider the fact that it teleported last time. Why would it teleport this time? Because they've literally made no change. The only thing they made as a change was keep the rat right where it's at in the machine. So for some reason, the time machine also has a variable on where you want to be. Does that not, like where you want to show up? So in the past, wherever we send you, we can put a location for you to show up in. Does that not sound like teleportation to you? Because that's what it sounds like to me. But no, it's not teleportation. It's potato. I mean, I got aggravated. I got really aggravated. Like I said, the doctor is an idiot and the researchers are morons in this. I don't know how they got their words other than it's just plot device 3. So what ends up happening is a few hours later, after another rousing hour-long sheets and sheets of reports for this failed experiment, where they don't even bother to look for the rat. They just assume it was vaporized with no proof, no evidence to support that whatsoever. The main character is, again, in the cafeteria for whatever reason. He's eating, and while he's there, the rat, of course, makes an appearance. It was stuck in a ventilation shaft in the kitchen. He catches it with a pot that had boiling water in it at the time, yeah, it's very weird. He doesn't burn himself. He captures the rat with this pot that, at the moment, a few moments before he caught it, had boiling water in it. I guess 430 years in the future, boiling water does not heat up the pot, because, man, he threw that sucker in there seconds after the water got spilled out after the chef that had it dropped it. Didn't hurt the rat at all, apparently. Totally fine. So, you know what? Maybe there is some hidden unspoken tech in the future that just wasn't really pointed out in the story. So he catches it, and they figure out that he figures out that the rat was teleported, was shifted where it was, because it's not teleportation. Its location was shifted about 300 meters, which is actually, again, we're getting to that, because what he discovers, what he figures out, again, without any real reason how he jumped and how he figured this out, he just kind of does. Again, short story, I can suspend my disbelief. He figures out that due to the Earth's rotation, which is about 280 meters a second, when they teleported at 100th of a second, or when they tried to time travel 100th of a second, excuse me, the rat teleported 2.8 meters because that's how far the world had spun. And it went to the west because I guess that's the direction that the world spins. So basically, that's where the rat is. Now, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because if it's in the past, it should have been to the east, I guess, like the opposite direction of where the Earth would spin. But whatever, it's a science fiction thing. So it went to the left instead of to the right. Basically, the idea is that the Earth's position after the teleportation, or after the time travel thing, that's the new position of the rat. So when he did a full second, it teleported it. It's like 280 meters, because it's like 280 meters a second or something like that. So when he did 1 second, it teleported about 280 meters to the west, which, again, it doesn't make any sense. I guess it should have been to the east, but because it's time travel. But again, just one more plot hole in this series of plot holes. And the rat, that's why the rat ended up in the cafeteria. Of course, not inside of a wall or anything like that, just luckily a vent shaft. Sure, whatever, it got lucky. Roll of the dice, right? So he figures out that whole plot thing is, and then for no reason, he starts drinking whiskey, which he just so happened in the lab. Why it was in the lab, why this guy suddenly becomes an alcoholic, you have no idea. There's nothing in the book to make you think that would be his personality or part of him at all. But he starts drinking whiskey that he had in the lab for whatever reason, and he calls this Dr. Connors. It's late at night, calls her up, and she's like, "Why are you calling me? What's going on?" And he's like, "Why did you hire me?" And she's like, "What the heck are you babbling about?" And he's like, "Why did you hire me?" "Because you're a promising young student." "You hired me because I'm easily controlled and compliant." And she's like, "Sure, go home, get some rest. It was been a long day, and we'll talk about it in the morning." And then he goes off onto this completely unearned, unwarranted, and unnecessary backstory about how he was a rugby star, which again does not line up with this character at all, because he's first described as a scrawny intellectual, skinny little white dude, and now all of a sudden he's Bo Jackson. I don't understand where that disconnect came from, but all of a sudden he was this pro rugby player, and he was very good, and he was going to be an all-star, and just before he left for academia or whatever, where his parents wanted him to go and become a physicist, or again, just off the wall nonsense, his sister calls him one night, says that her boyfriend is beating her. So Superman here runs out of the house and goes to run to wherever the hell his sister's getting the crap beat out of her. Why she called her brother and not the police, I have no idea. But again, this is 400 years in the future. Maybe the police are gone, and sibling justice is the way to go. No explanation for it whatsoever. There's no Uber or anything like that. I guess 400 years in the future, running is the most efficient form of travel. So Superman here throws on his capes and tights and his rugby pads, I guess, and goes running to wherever the hell his sister's at, where she's getting beat down. And while he's running, he runs through a bad part of town where it literally says a crackhead stabs him in the leg for whatever reason, and it caused a huge injury in his calf muscle that couldn't be repaired, and that's why he couldn't be a rugby player anymore, and why he went to academia. Also, his sister died that night, and the boyfriend got life in prison. Okay, so what I've also taken from this story is that it's totally warped. And number two, apparently 400 plus years in the future, medical science has not advanced enough to fix a muscle damage thing. Okay, sure, we'll go with that. We can travel the universe, we can terraform planets, but once a muscle tears, you're on your own. Super odd logically, but yeah, all of that is unearned, all of that is unnecessary, and it's unprompted. It makes zero sense why that would happen. And then he throws himself into the time machine 10 minutes into the past is what he teleports himself, knowing he's going to end up 10 minutes of time distance, depending on the Earth spinning, if he does this. He's not doing it to go and save his sister. He's not going back to stop himself from getting stabbed. He's not going back to do anything other than to be the first person to be time travel teleported. It makes no sense at all why this happens. And of course, this is, like I said, it's super cool, the concept of the fact that when they do the time travel thing, the Earth spinning changes where they're at. I thought that was super cool, even though it doesn't make any sense on what direction they end up going, because in the past you'd be where the Earth was instead of where it will be. You know what I mean? It's super weird, but it was cool because that's a concept I'd never been introduced to before. But Superman here, the biggest moron in the story, teleports himself 10 minutes into the past using a time machine and ends up inside of a mountain. Which is awesome. I thought that was great. It's a little weird because he's in the middle of this mountain, which apparently is hollow or something, because his legs end up inside of the rock of the mountain, and he's a little disoriented and everything when he comes to, and he has just enough time to realize what he's done, and then he smiles because he was the first, and then he dies. It's so weird. But yeah, honestly, it's just it aggravates me a lot because the motivation for doing that, other than narcissism to be the first, makes no sense. He figured it out. He understands what's going on. He understands what the error is. And instead of taking 2 seconds to Google a little bit of what is, 300 kilometers to my west, he just goes on switch and dies. And yes, I understand the whiskey. I understand he was drunk. He wasn't in his right mind. But here's another question. Why would this Dr. Connors, other than the fact that she's an idiot, allow either of her researchers to have unfettered access to start and run the time machine? Nobody does that. Today, nobody does that. You have to have at least one other person around in order to even open doors, and yet time travel. So yes, that's why this book is a 2 out of 5. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it because the concept of the time travel and the variable that was introduced was very clever, very interesting. And the prologue, the setup was great, even if the story did not live up to my expectations. So 2 out of 5, I think, is more than fair. And that's it. Please, this is just one person's opinion. If you disagree or would like to check it out yourself, it's a series of short stories, so you can get through them pretty quick. Please go check it out yourself. Link to the book is in the description. Come on back in the comments section, and let's have a conversation about it. I'd love nothing more. As always, though, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, feel free to put them in the comment section below. And as always, thanks.